Yo everybody, what's going on? This is Keegan from Kman Reviews. If you enjoyed this review, make sure you hit that like and the subscribe button, and if you have any opinions at all that you would like to share, make sure to leave them down in the comment section. Chloe and Halle, Ungodly Hour. Chloe and Halle, American R&B duo who, for the most part, I've been pretty in the dark about. Never really had the time to truly connect with them, even with them receiving widespread acclaim and prominence with some charting singles and multiple Grammy nominations, and yet I think my only exposure to their music was a brief, inattentive listen to their debut album, The Kids Are Alright, in 2018, and I naturally forgot pretty much all of it. So I was pretty happy to get this request on Discord by a good friend of mine to revisit the duo and their sophomore album, Ungodly Hour, released last year. Another one of their projects to receive appraisal after appraisal, complimenting the group's artistic growth and maturity. So that only built up my expectations for this record. Also, this will be a review of the Chrome edition that was released earlier this year, which is basically a deluxe reissue with 2 bonus tracks at the end. So with all that out of the way, let's dive in. What are my thoughts on Ungodly Hour? Let's find out as I review it track by track. We will start with the singles, with there only being 2 pre-release. The first one being Catch Up featuring Sway Lee and Mike Will Made It on production. And I think this is a great song. The instrumental is so appropriate. It's very smooth, very soft on the ears, with a bit of a pop influence underneath the trap skitters, bass hits, and claps. The whole thing provides a very light, danceable melody, and I can always get down with something like that. Vocally, I think the track is done really well. Sway Lee's got a bit more of a monotone presence, doesn't really feel like he's giving his all, and that really stands out when Halle's verse arrives with a passive-aggressive undertone and an immaculate falsetto. Normally, I'm not a huge fan of really high falsettos, but I think this one works really well. Lyrically, the track plays this concept of a back-and-forth love, doing something to your partner, but then they eventually get you back. Great track. And the second and final single, Do It, leads to probably one of my most controversial opinions I've had in a while. I think this is one of the weaker moments on the record. Now, look, before you get your pitchforks and your torches, allow me to explain. I don't think the entire song is bad. In fact, there's a lot of good stuff here, particularly the vocals, which is a very delicate performance, very breathy, intimate, very sweet as well. And the tone is charismatic. I think it's that exuberance that helps to propel the track. However, I do think the beat is probably the biggest flaw here. That skittering hi-hat is so prominent in the mix, overpowering these gorgeous wavy synth ripples. Sure, some bass thumps come in for the hook, but for the majority of the song, those 2 things are all you get. And I can't help but feel the beat comes off as a bit skeletal as a result. Don't really care for the hook too much either. Again, performance is well done, but the structure of it just kind of feels like a TikTok snippet, and to me, those have always come off as underbaked. I think the lyrical content is another shining moment here, an empowering, fun message with some lighthearted braggadocio. Nothing wrong with that. It's still a solid song, but the vibe for me just wasn't there. Now for the rest of the tracks. Opener Intro is a short 28-second introduction that really doesn't have too much purpose in my opinion. The harmonized vocals are nice, but again, this doesn't really feel like an opening to an album. It just comes off more as a very fluid transition to the next track, which I can give it props for. But when it comes to a full conceptual piece in the grand context of the album, I don't think it's even all that necessary. Forgive Me was the first track off this record that really hooked me. I adore this one so much, and I totally agree with it becoming a post-release hit. It opens up with these dark, theatric strings, and then the first verse kicks in with the bass. It's so rough, angry, and grimy. It is such a gripping melody. However, I think it's the vocal work here that is the star of the show. Chloe and Halle sing and rap with a fierceness, along with a good falsetto every now and then, that is so appropriate for this instrumental. It comes off very unapologetic and almost callous, and I adore that tone. Lyrically, the track also kind of has that feeling, being empowered in who she is. She doesn't need to apologize for being herself while also shoving it to this guy who chose someone else over her. Love this song, one of my favorites here. Baby Girl is probably my least favorite cut on the record. The track has a bit of a Latin tinge to it, most notably in the synths, featuring that plunky poppiness you hear in most of those kind of songs. Then we get these claps, the bass drum that come in for assistance, and it helps to give the beat an extra sheen, an extra polish. Vocally, yet again, the track excels. Chloe and Halle stick to their softer, more tame register, which perfectly works. but I do think the track doesn't have nearly as much of a groove as pretty much every other song here. It all kind of gets lost in this perpetual slowness this tempo is at, and even when a more grand synth passage comes in to try to give this song some depth near the end, I just feel like it's too little too late. Lyrically, it's a very motivational song. I cannot hate on that at all. Being a female empowerment song, which is great, I just wish the musical element was up to par. Tipsy, in my opinion, is Do It, but done better. It feels much more fleshed out, much more developed and animated, and it's mainly thanks to that production. The distorted bass, the impactful, bouncy, and very aggressive percussion is so captivating, along with these claps and added jingles in the back. The whole thing just commands your attention. And that attention also leads to these vocals, which are some of the most fun, sassy, and lively on the entire album, as the lyrical content matches this. Being tipsy or drunk off this guy's love, but also using that as a warning that if this guy does something wrong, she will do it right back at him, and even in some instances going as far as murder, which does make sense when we're talking about being intoxicated and doing irrational and inadvertent things. Banger song, give this a listen. The title track Ungodly Hour features a Disclosure produced beat, which had me a little bit worried since Disclosure has never been my personal cup of tea, but thankfully I think this one works really well. The track has a bit of a pop texture to it with the submerged synths and light driving bass drum, but it is still firmly grounded in warm R&B, and I like that combination a lot, and it suits Chloe and Halle. Their vocals feel reserved on this one for the most part, only being unleashed for a brief part of the chorus, and with that combined with the aforementioned beat, the whole thing is a pretty heavy vibe. The melodies are sweet, the structure and flow is very smooth, and lyrically it's about this relationship and how this guy doesn't seem to fully commit, but there is still a very strong connection between the two, and the chorus culminates with when this guy gets his act together and starts to truly appreciate himself and is ready to go all the way, then he can finally give her a call. Great vibe, great tune. Busy Boy is another album highlight for me. This is a bop of a track. It opens up with this vintage a cappella intro, even having that old-fashioned recording sound. Then the real instrumental kicks in, led by these dense, harsh bass pulses and snaps, later adding in a funky synth. It's a very rough, abrasive instrumental, but it's perfectly paired with Chloe and Halle's vocals, which kind of regain that angry boss bitch vibe I get from Forgive Me, but with a little bit more of a concentration on harmonies, most noticeably on the hook, which is very simple and repetitive, but the melody and the vibe of the song help to not make it so stale. Lyrically, it's about this guy who's been hitting them up along with some of her friends as well, kinda calling him out for being unfaithful and just in it for himself, calling him a busy boy as he's always moving. Quite the bop. I enjoy this. Overwhelmed kind of feels like a pointless inclusion. It's not even a minute long, just kind of feels like an interlude, but it's structured like it could have been a fully expanded song. But it's just a snippet to provide a break in the album, I guess. There is some nice lyrical motivation here about just taking a breath, relaxing, because sometimes life and situations can be overwhelming. Couple that with the delicate piano and gorgeous harmonies, this could have been a great song, but I guess this is all we get. Lonely has one of the most minimal beats on the record, but as a result, it has one of the most consistent vibes as well, if that makes any sense. The main thing here is that percussion. It's simple, it's effective, the bass provides a healthy, bubbly quality, while the snare has a bit of grit. There's minor synths every now and then, but they don't stand out enough to make an impact. If anything, they just provide an ambiance, which really helps the sensual feeling of these vocals. They're breathy, and they contribute a steamy sensation to these catchy melodies and an ear candy chorus. Lyrically, the song kind of deals with this isolation, hoping someone will call you while being alone, and realizing that it's okay to not be with somebody all the time, and after all the time you spend with yourself, you start to realize how much of a great person you truly are. Great message, great tune, great song. Don't Make It Harder on Me is a pretty calm, soothing, semi-acoustic R&B jam, and I kinda love it. The verses really harness that acoustic moniker. There's a light guitar, the bass, the snaps, it feels very intimate and heartfelt. And then the instrumental blossoms for the chorus with these harmonized falsettos, cushiony snare, and a grand string section. That change may seem sudden, but it is very welcome along with that vocal shift that I mentioned. It also feels like two different songs from two different eras surgically stitched together, but the stitching is so clean and precise and natural. Lyrically, the song covers this problem where you're in a relationship and you're happy, but then this ex comes back all apologetic and sincere, wanting to take you back, but I mean, they had their chance. Another great song. Wonder What She Thinks of Me is the ballad of this record, and this is such a good one. The instrumental is lush, grand, and sweeping with the echoed harmonies, the strings, the piano, and that punchy percussion, especially on latter moments where the build up to that climax is so satisfying, and then it just slowly fizzles out with an acoustic guitar. Chloe and Halle's vocals are some of the most entrancing and beautiful on the album. Their falsettos are downright angelic against this beat, and it almost feels like a holy experience. Lyrically, this track and Don't Make It Harder on Me are seemingly hand in hand, where this one's about building this affection and connection to this guy, but he's already in a relationship, and she doesn't want to come off like she's just trying to steal him away. Album highlight for sure, good song. ROYL, which is an acronym for Rest of Your Life, is a track that really grabbed me, and it's mostly due to that chorus. Chloe and Halle stick to their deeper register, the harmonies are immaculate, and the whole thing comes off as a combination of Beyonce and FKA Twigs to me. The beat also embraces some of these deeper, heavier elements. The keys have some real weight to them, and the verse has a grungy trap flair with the skittering hi-hat and a no fucks given flow and charisma to the vocals. Lyrically, it's simply about reassuring that it doesn't matter what mistakes you may have made, just live your life and have fun doing it. Love the message, plus the tune is kind of a banger. Great song. And now we get to the bonus tracks. Hazy is probably the most eerie and hypnotizing track on the record. The synths feel otherworldly, the drum is deep and ominous, and the vocals, the melodies, these harmonies, they're all in the lower register and very haunting. When that chorus comes around introducing this plunky synth, the whole thing comes off very carnival-esque, like I'm running through a haunted funhouse controlled by these two maniacal clowns, and I kinda love every second of it. Lyrically, the track is about this relationship with this guy who is very gentle, very tender-hearted, and wanting to see the more assertive side of him. This is one of my favorites on the album. I adore this one. And finally, the closer 80/20 is also a pretty good song. It kind of continues this theatricality and experimentation of Hazy, but to a lesser extreme. The verses start off with this bass pulse, guitar strumming, murky synths, which all comes into its own for the chorus, which is a bizarre fusion, keeping most of the elements from the verse but adding in an extra drum, and the guitar is mainly higher pitched. I don't think I've heard something so jumbled and clumsy, but also so extremely clean and satisfying at the same time. These vocals are great as per usual, as the lyrics have a unique message about how you're in this relationship, and this guy gives you around 80% of what you want. But then another guy comes around and he has that extra 20 that you've been looking for, that you've been craving. So now do you sacrifice this relationship for that extra bit? Great song, great closer. Overall, after listening to this album several times, I can definitely see where the hype comes from. Production and vocals are pretty spot on throughout this entire album, lyrics are often empowering and positive, but I can also see them being relatable. Not a perfect album though, I do think there were a couple duds, couple confusing additions to the track list, but as a whole, I can safely say I loved this. I'm feeling about an 8 out of 10 on this album. Well guys, hope you enjoyed that review. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.